A growing concern about education. Another issue I want to reflect on is the education system in Ethiopia. Today, many people are talking about education. Situation has become a major concern, and almost everyone seems worried about the future and quality of education. Some people even say that the education system has failed. However, when we say the education has failed, we should be careful about what we mean. It does not necessarily mean that the current government alone should be held responsible for everything that has gone wrong. Educational decline has a history. Educational decline has a history. Some people argue that the problems in Ethiopian education began many years ago, perhaps 3 decades or even more. I'm not saying this to criticize or belittle the efforts of the current government. Rather, I'm trying to look at the problem from a broader historical perspective. An education system does not suddenly collapse. Its decline usually begins much earlier, gradually and often invisibly. Education is like a tree. I often compare the education system to a large tree. When the roots of a large tree begin to decay, people may not notice it immediately. The tree may continue to look healthy from the outside. Its leaves remain green, its branches remain strong, and everything appears normal. But underneath the surface, the roots are gradually weakening. After many years, the first become visible. The leaves begin to dry, the branches become weak, and eventually the entire tree may fall. When the tree finally falls, people may look at the immediate circumstances and ask, what caused this tree to fail? They may ask, what caused this tree to fail? But the real problem began much earlier, when the roots first started to decay. The same is true of education. I believe the same principle applies to the Ethiopian education system. What we are seeing today did not happen overnight. Many of the weaknesses that are visible today began developing years ago. The problem may have been difficult to see from outside because of the system continued to operate. Schools continued to function, teachers continued to teach, and students continued to attend classes. But underneath the surface, there were problems that needed attention. This is why I believe we should not look only at the immediate situation when trying to understand the current condition of education. My personal experience. I say this partly because I've worked in the education sector for many years. For many years. I remember that approximately 15 years ago, in one training session, I expressed my concern that education system was already showing signs of serious weakness and could face major difficulties in the future. At that time, perhaps the problems were not visible to the general public as they are today. This is often the case with systemic problems. The people working inside the system may recognize its weakness long before those outside the system can see them. I repeat this. This is often the case with systemic problems. The people working inside the system may recognize its weakness long before those outside the system can see them. There is an old idea that the person who works closely with problem often understands it more deeply than someone who only sees the final result. We should look beneath the surface. Therefore, when we discuss the current problems of education, we should look beyond the visible symptoms. We need to ask, when did the problems begin? What caused them? Which weaknesses were ignored? What warnings were missed? What could have been done differently earlier? Without answering these questions, we may end up treating symptoms rather than addressing the roots of the problem. Recovery will also take time. Another important lesson is that if the decline has taken many years, recovery will also take time. I repeat this one. Another important lesson is that if the decline has taken many years, recovery will also take time. We should not expect complex education system to be transformed through a few quick interventions. If the roots of the tree have been weakened for many years, restoring the tree requires patience, care, and sustained effort. The same is true for education. Correcting the current situation will require long-term commitment, strong leadership, qualified teachers, appropriate resources, effective policies, institutional reforms, and continuous monitoring. The lesson for the future. My main conclusion is therefore simple. The current difficulties in Ethiopian education did not begin today, and solving them will not happen overnight. I'll repeat this statement. The current difficulties in Ethiopian education did not begin today, and solving them will not happen overnight. We need to understand the historical causes, identify the weaknesses at their roots, and develop long-term solutions. Rather than blaming one administration, one institution, or one generation, we should learn from the past and take collective responsibility for rebuilding the system. If the decline of education was gradual, its recovery must also be deliberate and sustained. A tree that took many years to weaken cannot become strong again in a single season. Education is the same. A concern about Ethiopia's future. Why equity in education matters? There is a question that has long troubled me. Why does Ethiopia remain poor? A concern about a concern about a con